Hi, welcome to another Better Conversations podcast with the founders. We are just here to have conversations on the everyday things we see and apply our youthful wisdom to share our thoughts. So today we're actually going to be talking about a topic that most people would have come across, which is around why young people today, specifically Gen Z, are extremely stressed and are feeling overwhelmed and report extreme levels of anxiety, stress, worry, and also feel like they're being left behind in their careers and don't feel as motivated. I guess, well, this is what most people perceive it as motivated to be able to continue with work. So I think it would be good to get your thoughts on it first, Paul. What do you think about that? Do you think that's true about Gen Z? I guess we're both in Gen Z. Do you think that's true about our generation today?
Uh, as in, if we're motivated to work.
If we're motivated to work, or maybe if just overall as a collective we're actually feeling more stress as well.
Okay, I
Yeah.
think I think from someone inside the generation, we are motivated to work.
Mm.
I see a lot of people getting out, doing the hard hours, doing the graft. Are we more stressed? Yes. And I think that's because we get less bang for our buck than our parents and the previous generations.
Mm.
With living standards, cost of living, and everything, yes, we want to say maybe a bit more, but the ratio of how much we're earning to how much cost stuff means we're not getting the same amount for in terms of value for what we're working for. And I think that is what's actually causing the stress. I think if people were working and being rewarded accordingly, I think people would be less stressed. They'd feel the rewards.
Yep.
Some people
Yep.
work for, like, I'm talking 60, 70, 80 hours
Mm.
a week, and in they do that for like 5, 6 years, and in that time they still can't afford to save for a deposit for a house.
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that is where people feel stressed out, because then instead of then saving for the house, you've worked so much, you then think to yourself, I need a holiday, you need a break.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
the holidays you go on the holiday, that's less budget towards the house, but the house
Mm.
budget wasn't even building that much anyway, just because of
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
expensive everything else is. So I think it's a really weird cycle that we're in, and yeah, it's starting to make people have kind of like breakdowns and yeah, burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally burnt out. I mean, I can definitely, once again, obviously, we're both in Gen Z. And I think this is actually an important video for maybe people who are not in our generation to actually watch. Because I think there's always a perception that, the younger people are just, they're mentally weaker. They're not willing to put in the
Mm,
graft. They get stressed easily. They all like have mental health problems. Like why can't they just get off their butts and actually do something with their life? And you hear a lot of
yep,
that. Um, and that's not to say it's completely wrong because we all know people that are like that are lazy and are just not doing anything. Um,
yeah,
but that's with every generation, I'm sure. And I think actually economic pressures is actually probably one of the biggest drivers that we are facing today. And as you said, not getting enough bang for your buck is definitely something that's driving even a lot of my friends as well, that are in good jobs, but yet they're still maybe saying, you know what, I'm gonna live with my mum, or I'm not willing to like move out and stuff like that because the reality is like they're just not earning enough to be able to afford living and also still being able to afford a house and actually trying to build for the future. And I think, to be honest, for our generation, I think the future is quite scary as well. I mean, another big driver of these economic pressures things is actually like how much cost is actually being pushed into the market due to things like sustainability goals and all of that
yes,
stuff as well. So like, we all know you and Les came in, and like if you've got a car, that is swiping you right now if you're in London. Like, and they've even introduced it outside of London as well. They've got areas now that are like that. So straight away, all of a sudden, because of the sustainability targets and past failings, I guess, to build a sustainable future, well, we're also seeing the impacts of that in our paychecks and in our taxes.
yeah. And I think what people don't realize is the people who are already, let's say, kind of economically behind, that have the biggest
Mm.
impact. And people will say, oh, people will say that they're not working enough, but some of them are.
Yeah.
Just that the cost of stuff at that level is still really, really high.
Mm.
Like they can't. There's certain things they can't afford to do, and it impacts them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, everything
Like,
costs money, and every penny counts when you're at that level.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. And like one of the things that definitely does come up is consumerism as well, like as one of the big
Hmm.
drivers, especially for our generation. Um, I, for me, I do think every generation definitely did consume, but maybe we're more inclined to. I think it's easier to consume maybe for us. Like, I don't know what your
Hundred
thoughts
percent.
are on that, but
There's
yeah,
adverts.
yeah,
There's adverts everywhere.
yeah,
There's YouTube adverts. There's
yeah,
adverts on Snapchat, adverts on Instagram,
yeah,
Facebook, TikTok,
everything.
TV,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
Piccadilly Circus.
yeah,
There's just ads everywhere. Everywhere you go,
yeah,
someone's advertising something, and it makes it hard. Sometimes you
yeah,
see
yeah,
stuff you like. Even I see stuff that I like. I'm scrolling through TikTok, and I'll see like a lime squeezer or something to cut potatoes or something to warm your hands or something. And you're
yeah,
just like, oh, that's nice. And it costs £3 or £4. But then if you buy every single one, those £3 or £4 start
yeah. It starts
adding up.
creeping up in
And
it.
that's, yeah, exactly. That's consumerism at its finest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's a big thing.
It is, it is, it is. And then I think the world of influencers as well and the actual power of social media is driving a lot of it as well. Like if the person that you're watching or one of your favorite content creators is going on a holiday to I don't know Bali or one of these nice places, you're going to feel more inclined to probably go just because of how nice it looked on the video. And for more, I think again the older generations don't realize how enticing it is as well. I mean, a lot of them probably aren't on Instagram or TikTok, but even for those that are maybe the generation above us, who are on Facebook, Facebook Marketplace has got much better now, and I'm hearing a lot of people in the upper generation even talking about things like, oh, I probably shouldn't have bought this, but it just looks so good. Or like, yeah, I'm thinking of going on a holiday here because I saw that it is very enticing and
Yeah,
it does actually encourage spending. It fully fuels spending even when unfortunately a lot of us maybe shouldn't do it
yeah.
because of the cost.
A big one that I think a lot of people in our generation can relate to is the marketplace for trainers and
Mm,
shoes. Is that now everyone's wearing the same trainers, but you have to get like a unique one.
yeah.
You know, everyone's wearing Jordan ones, threes, and fours.
Mm,
But I got this specific colorway. Look at this one.
yeah,
This one's a
yeah,
collaboration with Travis Scott. This one's a collaboration with this person. Or yeah, as like now, if you go buy some other trainers that isn't 120 pound or from one of
yeah,
these
yeah,
resellers, it's like, what are you wearing, bro?
yeah,
What's that on your foot? I ain't never seen that before.
yeah,
And now you're like, oh, not like people like bashing me for my footwear, what I'm wearing. It's like
yeah,
those are weird, fam. Why don't you just get some Jordan ones?
yeah. Yeah, for real, for
Yeah,
real.
and that comes from influencers and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
other things from social media. Where
mm,
now you want to buy a pair of trainers, you have to buy a certain trainer, and it's gonna cost you a certain amount.
yeah, yeah,
No
yeah,
more of the days of buying the 70, 60 pound trainers that are just like, oh, those are kind of nice. Yeah, I can rock those.
yeah,
Like, that's very rare now.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I have covered, because I wanted to actually hear your thoughts on this actually, is that we're just not patient enough. So you get people saying like you do realize if you just saved that money for like another 10 years, you would be able to get the deposit. So you're just not being patient enough. You're just too sort of, what's the word? I guess it's like instant gratification. You just want to gratify
Yeah,
yourself too fast. Like why didn't you
yeah,
actually just wait another 5 or 6 or 7 years? Then you would have got that promotion or you would have got more money in your bank. Like why did you have to be so, you know, quick with it? Why can't you slow down? And yeah, what do you have to say to that? Actually, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that's just I want to say kind of like ignorance to the whole situation.
Mm,
There is that I want to say is like, well, maybe 1% of it is instant gratification,
Mm.
But at the same time, 6 years is a long, 5, 6 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Life changes a lot in 5, 6 years.
Mm.
Um, 6 years ago, I wasn't, I didn't, hadn't even started university yet. 6 years ago,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thinking back to it, so it's, it doesn't make
Mm.
like in that space of time when you're saving for this one thing, other things can happen because life
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're waiting 6 years to buy a house, right? First of all, the house price isn't staying the same. In the six
Yeah,
years, the
yeah,
house
yeah.
price is going up. So the money you need to deposit today is less than the money you need to deposit in 6 years' time.
Yep,
If
yep.
you need 50K today, in 6 years' time, you might need 60, 70K.
Mm,
That's
mm.
how inflation and house prices work.
Yeah,
Also, in
yeah.
that time, in 6 years, you could have a you could have something big like having a child.
Yep, yep.
That's gonna cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And normally we in this country in our culture we kind of look sideways to people who have kids young. But
Mm.
let's say you started working and saving at 18 and you're looking to buy a first place at 24. If when you're 23, 24 you have a child, that's not having a kid that young.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not the ones where you look at you like it's 23, 24 is actually like a normal age to be having a kid. So it's not
Yeah, yeah,
even you couldn't like keep it in your pants and wait. It's
yeah, yeah,
no, that's just life.
yeah,
You
yeah,
if you've been with your girlfriend for 6 years or been with your boyfriend for 6 years, any partner for 6 years, and you're ready to start a family after 6 years, that's a normal thing.
yeah, yeah,
So then that's a cost. Now you can't. Now the house has to be delayed even further.
yeah,
So then
yeah,
that's not being patient. That's life happening, and
yeah.
again, you're not being able to see your efforts rewarded
Mm.
in a way like in a time frame that makes you think, let me keep on going. It's
Yeah,
not like a positive reinforcement for you to say, all right, I'm
yeah,
nearly there.
yeah. And
What
I
do you
actually,
think?
no, no. I think you actually hit the nail on the head. Like at the end, that's actually my view on that. I think there is yes, like truth to it in some sense that you do have to be patient. You know, like obviously you're not gonna a deposit like the amount that you need for deposit isn't gonna land on your lap. Like it's just not. You are gonna have to build it up. Um, but there is actually a bit of that you need to also still be seeing some sort of positive result. You need to get some sort of feeling that what you're doing is actually building towards something. And I think a lot of people, even when they're on that long journey of I'm gonna save out no £500 a month or whatever it is out of my salary, and they're building, they're still not feeling like they're actually getting to where they want to be. You know, it's like they're
Mm,
taking steps backwards. I don't think they realize that they're not weighing the actual progress up with the patience. Like you can be as patient as you want, but if you're not building and you're not seeing results, then you're actually just waiting around and doing nothing. And I think that's what's leading to a lot of anxiety as well and worry that you're doing the numbers, you know, you're doing the maths, and you're like, wait, hold on a second, like, yeah, I can keep this up for 10 years, but in 10 years' time, I'm gonna need more. Like, I'm gonna need more than what this is projecting me to have, and
yeah,
this is it's just not, it's not feasible to say to someone in that situation, "Oh, just be patient," because patience isn't actually their problem. It's the patience isn't actually the problem. I think people would actually be willing to save 5, 6, 7 years if they actually knew that at the end there would be something rewarding at the end. But when you're doing that and you still feel like you're being left behind, especially again with all of the stuff that's being thrown in your face that you could have literally today, I think it can be a bit demotivating. And I'm also seeing a lot of people as well, like even nowadays, just almost just throwing it all away, like just saying that you know what, I'm
mm,
just gonna take a year out of work and I'm just gonna travel the world, or I'm just gonna take 6 months out of work or whatever, and I'm just gonna try start a business venture or something. Like, obviously, that's not throwing it away, but you know what I mean. People are just saying, you know what, like this isn't working, so I'm just gonna try something completely different and just try and enjoy life because I'm not trying to retire at like 68 or 69. And it's actually kind of crazy that the retirement age right now is like 67, or I think it's 67, isn't it, in the UK?
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's just like, the older generation again is like the someone who's hearing that now at our age is like, I probably don't want to be at that age still thinking, or around 65, 66, still thinking I need to work another year to retire comfortably. Like, you want to be retired by then, and maybe you're working because maybe we can live for longer and healthier, but you don't want to be in a position where you actually feel like you need to keep on
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
You wanna be working because it's something to do, keep your mind active, not because you actually have to do it to
Mm,
survive and live.
mm, yeah. Yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, if we go into, I guess, like the next phase that we're thinking, so obviously, really, the solution I think to this whole problem is actually wanting to put in more hours and actually work harder in a short, like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I was watching one of like the directors of JP Morgan, I think, or was it JP Morgan or was it Goldman Sachs? It was one of it was one of the two. Um, and
Mm.
she was basically saying that the reason why our interns and grads basically need to work like 60 to 80 hours, well, basically 80-hour weeks basically, is because they need to become extremely good in a very short space of time. And the only way you can do that is by not letting time be the limitation. You actually have to put in the hours basically. Yeah. That's what she was saying. She was basically saying like, after 2 3 years, we need people who are actually like basically experts. So if it takes you normally 5 years to be an expert, we need to shorten the time that takes. So that means you need to put in more hours, basically. And that's how ruthless she was in it. She just said it like that, and I was like, snap, like I was like, snap. And when you think about it, I think that's what most people are seeing. Like in Gen Z, they're seeing like, actually, I have less time to get what I want, because if I wait 10 or 15 years, I'm gonna miss it. Like the reality is,
Mm.
I can't be like, 40 basically, and not have a house, maybe not have had the wedding that I wanted. Like, they're just gonna miss out on all of that stuff, and you're gonna be like 40. So it's like, I
Mm.
think most people are seeing the solution is you just have to put in more hours. And like, I guess the question I was gonna throw at you, I guess, is, do you think it's worth it to put in like those amount of hours to potentially get the reward? Because I think a lot of people maybe see that as a trade off that they're not willing to do.
I think that just depends on every individual, if I'm being honest. I
Mm,
think if you can and will put in the hours, then yeah, but it depends what you value. Do you value economic success as your number one priority? Do you value climbing the corporate ladder as your number one priority? Or do you value your quality of life as your number one priority? With that quality of life, do you value your quality of life in the present, or do you value your quality of life in the future more?
mm,
Because I think that's what determines that. If you value your quality of life in the present, then probably no, you don't want to be doing 80 hours a week. Because how much time do you actually get to spend enjoying your efforts, enjoying your weekends, seeing family and friends, going on holiday, doing stuff? Sometimes I've heard stories where people have to cancel their holiday 2 days before.
yeah,
Yeah, the company will pay and reimburse you, but that's besides the point of you're missing out on that quality time
yeah, exactly.
with loved ones. But then on the other hand, do you want to make sure that your quality of life in the future is amazing? You can send your kids to private school,
Mm,
can provide a very good life for them, live in a nice, comfortable, safe area. You can afford to take your kids on holiday during the half terms, maybe once or twice, even more than that in a
yeah, yeah,
year. So yeah, each individual person values that differently.
yeah.
But the 80 hours, like I have a friend who told me last week, she works in sales
Mm,
and she does very well for herself. She said she would never do 80 hours a week because then it's basically like doing two jobs. So
yeah,
that goes back
yeah.
to what you said that director was saying, that they have to become experts, and it's because you're
Mm,
basically in two jobs in one, and you actually the value you're getting paid is less
yeah.
because don't see it as, oh, I'm getting paid 80K a year for one job.
Mm,
See it as you're doing two 40K a year jobs and
yeah,
you're just
yeah, yeah,
surviving. And
yeah,
I was like, damn. That's so true. But then
Mm.
at the same time, like the director said, that means that in that 2 years, you can become an expert.
Yeah,
You'll know what you're doing. And
yeah.
then from there,
The
the
levels
sky's the
are,
limit.
yeah.
So, yeah, it depends what each individual person's. And I don't think that it's like, I don't think that any option is wrong.
Mm, mm.
I don't think you should have to work 80 hours a week to do well. But then maybe that's where some people might say I sound lazy.
Yeah.
Some people say that. But I don't think you should have to work 80
Yeah,
hours a
yeah,
week
yeah.
to have a decent standard of living in this
Yeah, yeah,
country.
yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, like, once again, I understand the idea that the director was saying. Like, if you're gonna have if you're in an industry where you need to be an expert, you need to actually know a lot to actually operate at a level where you can be autonomous and you don't need someone like a manager looking after you, looking over all of your work, which she is coming from an industry where that is the case. Then yeah, you
Yeah.
probably do need like to become an expert quickly. And obviously time is normally the limitation. Like I guess what someone might do over the span of 6 or 7 years in their career you can do in 2 years if you just work basically the same amount of hours they would
Mm.
in those 6 to 7 years basically, which does mean like 80 or 90 hour weeks, which is insane. But as you said, I don't think you should need to do that, and I think that's the trade off people are realizing. People are saying, you know what, to have like a good quality of life, why do I need to do that? And I think that's what people are seeing in Gen Z, and they're saying, actually, hold on, I don't need to do that. I can actually still. I'm not gonna put like tons of stress on myself to get the house. Instead, I'll probably just rent. I'll work a normal job, and I'll just be fine like that. And I think the older
Mm.
generation see that as laziness, but I think what if you're seeing it from our perspective, you're seeing that as someone who's just not willing to actually make that trade off, which is actually completely fine because, as you said, I think everyone's different, and I think you shouldn't have to make that trade off. But I was saying to another friend, I think about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, actually, a friend at work, and it was like a little bit of a thought experiment. And I said, do you think, because obviously, yeah, the economic pressures are higher, like buying a house is harder, all of that stuff. The numbers are clear. Um,
Mm.
but do you think that in every generation, I guess, it's the case that the people that are willing to do that end up emerging at the top, basically, in some sense? Like, is it just a case where the smartest and hardest working people are the ones that end up achieving that, and it's not just a norm across all generations? If you get what I mean.
No,
Like,
explain that a bit more.
so for example, you take someone like us two, right, who did okay in
Yeah.
school, went to university, got a degree, like, and actually is working in a good environment and so forth. More than likely, I hope so, we'll have prosperous lives, right? But then there's a lot of people that haven't done that. So, do you
Mm.
think the propaganda of it's harder to live in this economy only really applies to those who actually aren't actually willing to do maybe that little bit
Nah,
extra? Yeah.
no. I don't think it applies to.
Mm,
I think the propaganda isn't propaganda, it's real. I
mm,
think if you look at the average earnings to average house price ratio today versus 40 years ago,
yeah.
there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Big
But do
difference.
you think the smartest people in every generation find out how to navigate that and still get what they want?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's really the question.
But then
Like,
what about the rest of society though?
yeah. Yeah.
I don't think you should be limited just because
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say your intelligence isn't the
Yeah, yeah.
highest. I still think if you have the graphs to put in, the
Mm.
dog hours to put in,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still think you should be able to like be rewarded for that. And I
Mm.
think in the previous generations in the 80s and 90s, that was still an option. If you
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
low
yeah,
skill job and you put in the hours, you were gonna get something, like be rewarded for it. You're still gonna do like decently
mm,
okay. But
mm,
I think today it's kind of like
yeah,
perfect example. So I've done a lot of stadium work around London,
yeah, yeah,
and if there's a lot of people there, there's students there, there's people trying to make extra money for their families there. I'm not gonna say which stadiums, but let's just say a certain stadium in North London that's red,
yeah,
right? Let's just say you go there, right?
yeah,
Bro, I remember when I was like 18 and I went there, they would pay like £9 an hour sometimes, 8.50 an hour
yeah, yeah, yeah,
for working at that stadium. And back in those days, that was actually like good pay. Like some days I'd be
yeah, yeah,
happy.
yeah,
I remember I've been to other stadiums that I actually don't remember which ones, but I've been to other stadiums where they were paying like 7.50,
yeah,
£8
yeah,
an hour, right? But fast forward to now, well, fast forward to like my most recent time in stadiums. Even though I'm doing less hours, I am getting paid more because my skill level is slightly more.
mm,
I was no longer just a standard cashier. I joined, like, to say, the premium team in one of them,
yeah, yeah,
and my pay went up. But my pay went up significantly. Where, like, some days the difference between the premium pay and the old pay at the Red Stadium in North London is like £5 difference per hour.
yeah, yeah,
It shouldn't be such a big difference.
mm,
You
mm,
should
mm,
be like, you should be able to, even though you're not. I'm not saying that the premium pay should be less.
yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
that the lower rate of pay should be higher.
mm,
People
mm,
can actually get rewarded for turning up and doing a job, because some days you'd actually be working harder when you're on the 850 or whatever,
yeah, yeah,
because the amount of customers you're going through.
mm,
In the premium, the reason it's premium is because there's less customers that they've paid a bit. The customers themselves have paid a bit more, so
yeah,
you
yeah,
actually, like, sometimes less to do.
mm,
Yeah, so like I think if you're just because you're not as skilled, that shouldn't be like a £5 difference between
mm.
how much you can make an hour. Because over a bunch of hours, that's a lot of
No,
money.
that's a lot. That's a lot. All of us,
Yeah,
right? That's
that's
a
a lot
lot.
of money.
That's a lot. Like, it's interesting, yeah. I'm just playing devil's advocate in it. I do actually, what's it called? Agree with what you're saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate because
Mm.
also, do you think that it is maybe a little bit of the natural progression of society in a sense that lower skilled jobs would ultimately just start to go like we'll just start to value them less as technology starts to improve and people that decide to upskill themselves and improve in those technologies and get better will eventually over time just I guess maybe not be rewarded the exact same as maybe when the technology was emergent, maybe let's say 10 or 15 years ago. But let's say, for example, prompt engineering, yeah, let's say prompt engineering right now, like for AI. Um, we're looking at, I think I looked at a Wall Street Journal article actually recently, and they literally said, I think it was like 180K. It's a new job. It's like 180K dollars, not UK
Yeah.
pounds, yeah, but dollars, yeah, to be a prompt engineer at their startup, right? And you're like, what on earth? Because they're basically training these large language models and stuff. And obviously, right now, that's how much it will be. Probably in 3 or 4 years when it dies down a little bit. I don't know when it's going to die down, but probably in the future, sometime, that salary is not going to be that anymore. It's not going to be valued at that much. Could we say the same
Hmm.
for maybe now, which is people that are maybe just that haven't upskilled themselves on the emerging skill sets that are needed for our economy are actually suffering the most?
No, I disagree. I
Mm.
think I think there's a trap with that, and I think I've seen it with software engineers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
two
yeah.
years ago, when I was on the job hunt, everyone was saying software engineers, a
Mm,
good
mm.
career, it's solid. Da, da, da. You can earn lots of money in it. Okay, cool. I didn't want to do software engineering because coding ain't for me. I've tried it before, and I was just like, I'm not learning how to
Yeah,
code,
yeah, yeah.
right? So, but then I was considering doing a coding boot camp. I was like, if I do a boot camp, every day, I believe I can learn it.
Yeah,
But then, found alternatives to my job hunt, la da da. Fast forward to now, I'm seeing that there's a saturation in the software engineer and what's it called? The data architect.
data architect. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah.
there's a there's a saturation in the market
Mm,
because there aren't as many jobs anymore,
yeah,
and there's a
yeah.
lot of people who did take the advice, did the boot
Mm,
camps,
mm,
learned how to code and stuff. But because of the release of ChatGPT and other AI models, the teams are the teams at companies that were needed to do the job. It's no longer a team of like 10. It's now like a
yeah.
team of 8 and 7 and 6
It gets lower and lower.
because of the progressions of AI.
Mm,
So just people try to upskill themselves. Like we're
yeah,
told
yeah,
constantly, upskill yourself, get new skills for the emerging market and emerging job roles. They took a shot and missed.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
peak. Now imagine,
No, it
no,
is.
because
No, it is. It is. It is.
imagine you paid
It
one
is.
k. Imagine you actually paid 1k for a boot camp, and then you
Yeah,
still can't find a job.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, it is. It's true because I find it interesting because some people do take take a risk with their career as well. I think people don't realize that there's also risk management when it comes to picking a career. Like people don't actually tell you that when you're at A level, GCSE, they always tell you, "Oh, what do you want to be? Doctor, nurse, whatever." And it's all like a fairy tale type of, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go uni and study this," right? But what they don't tell you is, like, once you choose your career, it is a risk. Like, you are deciding to specialize in something. And if it is something, especially in technology, that moves so fast, you are at risk of being left behind with the choice that you've
Yeah,
made. Um, and yeah, we're even seeing technology start to replace things that you wouldn't expect. But like, it is getting to that point where also people might feel like I've heard it a lot. People are already starting to say like, what's the in like 10, 15 years, like, is there actually going to be a point of doing things like what does a data manager actually do in 10, 15 years when you got like massive databases that AI can basically manage for you? Like, what do you actually do? Does that job title actually exist anymore? Um, and
yeah,
I think that's also maybe a little bit demotivating as well for Gen Z in some sense that we now have to learn to maybe be somewhat generalist, which is actually quite hard. We have to maybe be a bit
mm,
more broad than a bit more niche, which is what older generations were. Like you could be very niche. Like your job description was probably like 4 or 5 lines. That was it. You knew what you had to do. Like 70s, 80s, you knew what you had to do. You come into work, that's what you're doing. You know what you're doing. It might be repetitive, it might be quite boring, but you know what you're doing. You're getting your hourly pay, you're going home. Whereas like now I feel like our jobs are very much very generalized. Like the job descriptions are massive. You have to apply for it. And then hopefully if you get through, you get into the job and it's actually completely different to what job description is. And you're now having to like manage like tons of different things on the go because your skill sets now has to be like extremely broad. And that's actually quite hard. And I think that leads into like the stress part of it, which
yeah,
is a lot of people.
yeah,
I've even found it in my company. A lot of people enter a job inside of a firm or outside of a firm, wherever it is, inside of my company, and they're like, "This is not what I expected." Like the job description was one thing, but I'm like out here doing like a ton of other things, and a small percentage of my job is actually doing that thing that I wanted to do.
mm.
Yeah.
I think another thing, like, following on from what you're saying,
Mm.
is our generation have to switch jobs like 3, 4, 5 times in their career.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's not that's if you have done one job for 10 years in our generation, I don't know how you did that. That's kind of impressive. That's a stat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
now people are. I think the employees, like so us, the workers, are switching because we're trying to climb the ladder and earn more money.
Yeah.
They say job hopping is one of the best ways to increase your salary.
Mm.
You can negotiate. It's like, oh, I did this in my phone company. Move
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then in terms of also your role at your current job disappearing and you being replaced by AI or some external team in another country that costs less to fund,
Yeah,
you have to find a new job. And
yeah, yeah,
again, that adds to the stress. It's no
yeah,
longer one job for 40 years, the same team for 40
yeah. The
years.
same
The
desk.
people at work are your best friends,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and your salary is just gradually increasing
yeah,
year on year. Everything's fine.
yeah,
Um, I think the older generations had it easy. Now that we're having this conversation, I
yeah,
think
yeah,
those
yeah,
who wanted to really push and do extra hours and do two jobs, I think they did that, and I think most of them were very successful. But I think a lot of them were still very successful with one job,
mm,
their same old boring 9 to 5 every day for 30,
yeah,
40 years.
yeah,
And I think the issue is that's no longer an option for our
yeah,
generation.
yeah,
Everyone who wants to do well in our generation has to either have two jobs, so one main one with a salary and one side one,
yeah,
or a job and a side hustle,
yeah, yeah,
kind of like us right now.
yeah. That us right
Whether
now.
Exactly. When you've made a YouTube channel, you've made a podcast, you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
hair,
yeah,
you're doing lashes, you're
yeah,
selling trainers, you're selling vintage clothing, uh, you're selling cakes and
yeah,
biscuits and cookies. So everyone has to have a side hustle in our generation
yeah, yeah.
to not even prosper,
It's
to
not
actually
impossible.
sometimes survive. Some people are doing a side hustle to actually survive. It's no
Yeah,
longer,
yeah,
oh yeah, I'm trying to get ahead. Let me
yeah,
take my
yeah,
spare
yeah,
time, put it into this, and I'll do amazing. No, it's
yeah,
just to actually survive. Make
yeah,
sure you're
yeah.
doing okay. You're not suffering.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a really good point. And to be honest, I actually like what you're saying as well, like previously about the older generation as well, because I think they probably take for granted like how quickly the world is actually moving, because obviously capitalism is fueling a lot of this, right? And when you've got technology, you've got lower barriers to entry for everyone. So before you had a firm that was just really good at one thing, and no one would try and touch them because they could just get really good at processes and just like Henry Ford, like building the car. You had a job there because you knew that Ford were just amazing at it, right? And you just go there, come back. There's no competitors out here really. But as technology emerges, the barriers to entry lower, and all of a sudden you've got you know one guy in like India, let's say, who now has access to the internet and he can create his own firm that does something very similar, and now he can lower the cost because their salary, their currency is lower and stuff. And this is happening in industries all the time, and that also leads to these movements as well for like people like us, because now you've got so many firms who are willing to pay more, or like the workload is less and you're getting paid more, or maybe it's just a more exciting job because it's a emerging startup or something. Like the amount
Mm.
of companies now that can be created because of the lowering of barriers of entry, like I don't think we'll ever get to a point where maybe something as big as space travel is like a low barrier to entry. But I mean, I can see us getting to a point where stuff like, solar energy, where, building solar panels and putting that on your house and stuff, like over time, the speed that people are going to be able to make that and the technology will just be so easily accessible. Like you could you could create a solar energy company if you wanted to, and the cost might not actually be that high.
Bro,
Um,
that is actually so wild you said that.
yeah, it's
I actually have a friend from school who's done exactly that.
yeah, it's this is the thing.
Yeah.
Like before, starting a YouTube channel was extremely costly, probably because
Yeah.
buying a camera and then uploading it to like a extremely slow web. But now you got loads of people doing it, and it's extremely cheap to do so. So that's also another thing where we also in Gen Z we're not only navigating like you know this whole idea of we need to actually start earning more money. We're also navigating the actual uncertainty of the job market and the risk that are literally ahead of us every single day, which is there's tons of companies popping up, tons of opportunities. Which one do we pick? Like which one's aligned with our career? And even when we pick it, we might find that it's not even the job that we actually wanted to do in the first place. So
Mm.
yeah, because that's another thing. People are. I think I always hear a lot of the old generation saying stuff like, they don't stick to one thing or they don't know what they want to do. But it's like actually, there's too many things to do, and we actually can't find a niche because all jobs are just most of them are now generalist. Like you have to just be a
Yeah.
generalist. Yeah,
And even the when they say, "Oh, we need to stick to one thing," it's like you stick to one thing, but that thing might disappear in 3, 4 years time.
Yeah,
Like it might
literally.
not, my job might not exist. So that's not
Yeah,
me not sticking to it. That's just the way the economy is right now.
yeah,
The whole environment and landscape has changed. That's why I don't like. I know I'm a firm believer of you should listen to elders for wisdom
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
guidance.
100%.
Um,
Hundred
what's that
percent.
age old saying? Smart people learn from their mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others.
Mm, mm,
But when the environment is so drastically different,
mm.
it's not the same. Their advice isn't the same. It's not as helpful,
Yeah,
especially if they're not in, how should I put it, in the sector that you're interested in going into.
yeah, yeah. It's
So
true.
like if you're, let's say your uncle is a pilot,
Mm.
but you're trying to be a software engineer,
Yep.
how is his advice at 60 years old of being a pilot
Yeah.
going to help you
Yeah.
in landing a role? Like, I'm not saying there's nothing he can say that will help you. I'm not
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying how much of it is actually going to be relevant,
Yeah.
because that is a career. You become a pilot, you get a pilot's license. Boom, you're a pilot for 40 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you do make a decent amount. Da, da, da. It's vastly different being a software engineer where
Yeah. Yeah.
your job role changes, the job at your company changes, your job might disappear, you might get replaced,
Yep.
they might
Yeah.
someone find one better, you might find an AI better than you. It's
Mm.
not the same.
Yeah.
So how much can that advice really be helpful, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think the idea of like uh mastery or becoming a master at something is slowly dwindling as well. Um
Yeah.
like you know, once again, it's one of those things where, for example, in engineering, you've got people that are really committed to just become like a senior engineer or someone who's just literally perfect at this thing. You know, like they're like top of their game. They can sign off tons of documents. Like they're a master at it. And right now, even in my current company, let's say, people are actually struggling. Like the seniors are struggling to find younger people who actually want to become that. And once again, I think it's because there's literally more attractive. Not only is there more attractive routes, there's also the risk that actually, will we actually need masters in the future? Like, does that job exist in 30 years where we actually need someone to be the be all and end all of knowledge? Probably not. Like, like you're probably going to be replaced. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I think it's hard for them to see because they've obviously become successful becoming masters in their field and actually climbing to the top after 30, 40 years, literally going to the same company and grafting and just doing the same thing over and over again. But it's becoming more apparent, I think, for our generation, especially, that that is actually a very risky move, especially at the pace that things are changing. Like,
Yeah.
if you commit to that and you try to become a master at one thing, you do have a very big risk. And I think most people are now just becoming generalists, which is, I think, leading to stress because it's much easier to commit yourself to maybe one thing for a very long time, like learning the piano or learning how to play guitar. Like if you just said, you know what, every day I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to get better at the guitar. Like, yeah, you could do that for 40 years. That's very low stress. But if you then say, I need to get good at, I might not be like a master at the guitar, but I do need to get good at the drums, the bass guitar, piano. Like I actually need to do all of that to
One
actually,
man band.
yeah, like literally become a one man band to be able to survive in the economy. Then now you're raising the stress levels because you can't commit one. You can't spread yourself that thin to be able to do all of it. And I think people are just realizing there's a point where we just have to stop. Um,
Mm.
and I think it's leading to a lot of yeah, a lot of hopelessness, I'd say. I think amongst our generation, which I think is leading to like the depression, the anxiety, the stress. Um, yeah,
I think for the last thing, I think I also think the older generation. um putting, I want to say, I can't think of the right word, but like, let's say standards of achievement on
Mm,
us. You know
yeah,
when they say
yeah.
stuff like, "Oh, when I was your age, when I was 20, when I was
Yeah,
24,
yeah, yeah,
when I
yeah,
was
yeah,
30, I had
yeah,
3 kids and a house already."
yeah,
You know, I think that
yeah,
kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think they understand that. I'm not saying that that thing is the worst thing in the world, but it can add like a little bit of hurt and can be
Mm,
slightly damaging
yeah,
because you know how we always say, oh, like in the self help stuff, they always say, you shouldn't focus on others, compete with yourself, and make sure you improve
yeah,
every day,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That kind of talk from the older generation about when I was your age, that can make you feel like you're not doing good enough,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then that can lead to, am I worth being here?
yeah,
Am I am I
yeah,
worth it to my friends and family?
yeah.
Because I'm this age and what have I achieved? What has other people achieved compared to me? And
Mm,
then like, am I a
mm,
waste of breath? That
yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that I do think that can add a slight can be not slightly, that can be damaging to
yeah,
the psyche of
yeah,
our generation.
yeah. I think that's a really good point to end on, actually, because standards of achievement certainly change over generations. And I still actually think we're at a stage in our generation where we're still figuring it out in terms of what
Mm.
achievement actually looks like for Gen Z. Like you like winning the war was like you know what I'm saying like an achievement for like there's people that are still alive today. Obviously they're extremely old, but like for them that was like an achievement. You know, like rebuilding the UK economy, like that was a success. Like
Mm.
now we're facing sustainability, we're facing AI. There's so many like challenges that we're gonna have to deal with in our generation. I think the standard of achievement for our generation looks very different to the people that are managers right now, which the people that are basically like, 20 or 15 years ahead of us in their career. And, they're saying, yeah, well, like, as you said, when I was like your age, I came out of uni. So some of these guys didn't even have to pay for uni, or they only have to pay like £3,000.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. I
like,
shouldn't even think of that.
yeah, yeah, like honestly, like, yeah, I came out of uni, got a grad scheme. Yeah, I've been in this company for 15 years or whatever. Like, yes, it's nice for you. Like I feel like for them, that was comfortability and like stability is what success is for them. But I think for us, it is going to look different. I think for Gen Z, it will look different. And I was actually
Yeah.
watching a video. I was actually watching a video recently about actually it was by a Harvard professor. She was saying that she thinks that success for our generation might actually look like being able to travel the world, actually work part time, and still be able to have a family. Like because there'll be technologies that can do the work for us, and will actually push society forward in a sense that actually you don't have to work as hard, and have to yeah, you don't have to work as hard to achieve the same standard of living. Basically, she thinks that that could actually be what success looks like, and that also might contribute to sustainability because people aren't traveling to work as much, and all of the stuff to it. And I kind of like that thought. I didn't agree with everything she said, but I kind of like that thought that potentially for our generation, beating sustainability might actually look like changing our economic objectives and goals, and saying actually, why do people have to continue working 50 hours a week when we've got AI that can actually do a lot of the stuff we do today? So yeah,
But then that comes full circle to then
yeah,
our perceived laziness
yeah, exactly.
of hoping for that have to happen and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Bro,
interesting.
I just can't believe that uni used to be like 1K a year or 3K a year or whatever.
Literally,
Like that's a big difference.
massive difference. Massive difference.
People
Complete
out here are
difference.
like 60K in debt when people used to be 3K in debt.
Yeah,
3K in debt, you could pay it off in 1 or 2 years.
yeah.
60K is different.
That's different. Very different, man. Yeah, but yeah, no. We hope
Yeah.
that you enjoyed this conversation for sure. If you stayed this long. And definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're a Gen Z as well. Let us know how much of this you relate to. And yeah, we'll definitely be willing to hear your thoughts.
Also, if you have any questions for us that you'd like us to discuss in the channel, we'd be happy to take them in. And yeah, if the questions are good, we'll definitely chop them up in the future.
Yeah, 100%. Right. See you in the next one.
Take it.